So now that we've set up our location hierarchy, let's connect the device to our network. And to connect the device, we first need to onboard it. And there's two ways of onboarding. You can go and follow the onboarding wizard, which you can access by clicking on this onboard button. But a quicker way of doing it, and the one we're going to use here in the lab, is to click on the quick add button over here. Do quick add devices. And all you need to do is type in a serial number. So this is our serial number, which we're going to paste in here. And what you can also select is the device location. Now, the whole reason with it, this whole location hierarchy, is so we'll be able to assign devices to it. So let's select floor 1, and this will assign the access point that we're adding to floor 1. Select. The other thing to note in here is, so if you have multiple devices to add, you can copy multiple entries into this field in here, or you can import a CSV file. So when you purchase devices in bulk, you'll be able to import via a CSV file all the devices that you want to onboard. So we'll just be dealing with one AP, so we'll onboard this AP. We want it on floor 1, click Add Devices. And what this does is, it creates an entry in the Redirector service. So it tells the Redirector that this serial number in here will go and belongs to this ExtremeCloud IQ instance. And where do you get information about this instance? If you go up here, top right hand corner, and click on About ExtremeCloud IQ. Okay, what this tells you is where the data center is, which Redirector host we're using. It's always Redirector. And then, which are the cap web servers. So basically, the Redirector will say, okay, the access point we've just put in needs to be redirected to this cap web master host, and this cap web master host will then redirect it to this server down here, which is where the access point is going to be connecting to. And these are also the entries that you can use for firewall configuration. So if you need to configure your firewall for CapWeb, which is what we said is needed from the AP to ExtremeCloud IQ, this is where you can find the fully qualified domain names, and this is where you can access the firewall configuration guide if you need more information. But in terms of redirection, so the most important here is down here. It's called VIQ ID, Virtual IQ ID, or this is the ID of your ExtremeCloud IQ instance. And basically, by typing in that serial number, we're tying that serial number to this VIQ ID, which means it only belongs to your instance, to this instance alone. And this is where it's going to pop up once we connect it. Okay. So the access point is not yet configured. It's not yet connected. And a couple of things to explain in here. You see on the left hand side you have the status column, and the status column tells you a couple of things. First one is the device connected or not? The second one is the device configuration in sync? And the way the configuration sync takes place is the administrator will either manually push the configuration down to the devices, or you can use an auto-provisioning process, which means whenever the access points are connected and they pop up in the system, they will auto-provision themselves to whatever configuration was associated with them in ExtremeCloud IQ. So here we have a brand new AP, no configuration, nothing has been done in ExtremeCloud IQ. And you can tell that this is a new AP that has never touched ExtremeCloud IQ, because you see there's no information in here, and the host name is set as host name, which is the default, which means these access points has never actually talked to ExtremeCloud IQ. And you can use this when you're troubleshooting connectivity. So if the access point has never reached ExtremeCloud IQ and it's connected, it might be a firewall issue in your network or at a remote site. So what we'll do now is, all we need to do is connect the access point to the switch. We're counting on that switch to provide IP connectivity, give it an IP address, a IP default gateway, and DNS server service, and obviously internet access. And what's going to happen is we're going to power that AP on, it's going to contact the redirector, and then the redirector will take the AP serial number and then redirect it to this instance, and it's going to pop up as green. So once the device connects to ExtremeCloud IQ, you'll see two things. First of all, on the device itself, you're going to see the LED go from red to white. It's going to be solid white. And in ExtremeCloud IQ, you'll see this green hexagon in here, which means the device is now connected to ExtremeCloud IQ. The configuration audit icon is going to remain red because we haven't yet synced the configuration with the AP, and the configuration sync always happens from ExtremeCloud IQ to the AP, not the other way around. So ExtremeCloud IQ is always the ultimate source of truth when it comes to configuring devices. What also happened is, since we assigned the location to this device already, you see that you have training Farnham, the courtyard in here. So let's go to this location. Okay, you can move this access point to wherever you think it needs to be. Okay, but more importantly, let's go back to the ML Insights and let's go to our planning view. So you'll see this AP, which is now blue, and it has a serial number in here, popped up, as opposed to the gray devices, which are simulated devices we've used in the planner tool. So this is an actual physical AP connected to the network, and you can also see down here which Ethernet subnet is connected to, so 192.168.85.0. And you can then move this AP around, and when you move the heat map, when you see the heat map, this AP will now contribute to the heat map with regards to simulated versus real APs. And you can see that this one, since it's on default, it still has its radios on maximum power compared to the others that have had their power lowered down to 15 dBm. Okay, so the other thing you can do is, if you haven't assigned the location in the onboarding section, you can actually onboard multiple access points and then swap a simulated AP with a real AP. So you can actually go, okay, I'm happy with my deployment, I'm actually going to connect the devices, and then one by one you can swap the simulated APs with real ones. And that reduces the amount of administrative tasks you have to go through when you're positioning these access points on the floor plan, because they're already there. You just need to know which one maps to each location. Okay, so let's go back to manage. Okay, so from this screen, let's go to configure, and we'll create our first network policy. So we currently have none, and when it comes to network policies, the network policy is the master container for everything that has to do with configuring our network. So let's create one. We will only configure wireless in this course. We won't be configuring switches or routers. And let's call this Corp1. And save the policy. Let's add an SSID. So let's add a wireless network. And we will call it PSK1. So it's going to be just a simple pre-shared key protected Wi-Fi network. And what you're going to see here on the left-hand side, you're going to see a configuration guide that's telling you what needs to be configured as a minimum, because there's going to be many options that you can configure in here. Not all of them are an absolute requirement. So in here, you will see what's still missing from you finishing the network policy configuration or an object configuration, in this case an SSID. So let's select WPA2, WPA3 Enterprise and see how the settings over here changes. So if we select Enterprise, we need to add a radio server, and let's go to Personal, which is the PSK, and all we need is a key that we're going to put in here. So let's put in a key. and this is going to be the password we're going to be using for connecting to the network. You can add captive web portals to different networks. More on captive web portals a little bit later. What we're going to do here is we'll add a captive web portal, simply enable use policy acceptance, or you can disable the whole thing. So we'll add captive web portals a little bit later. Right now, all we want to do is test basic connectivity. We will use the default user profile, so we're just going to map this user to VLAN 1. Save the SSID for now. We're not going to use any device templates, and we won't configure any additional settings. All we're going to do is we're going to go and deploy this policy to the device. So this then actively pushes the policy to the device. So a couple of things here. You have your filters in here, so you can filter out which access point you want to see in this screen. And by the default, you see access points that have already been assigned with this policy. So instead, let's go for all eligible APs, so all the access points that could receive this policy. And down here, you're going to see a bunch of simulated access points and then this real access point that we've connected. Or alternatively, you can then filter. You can apply a custom filter based on location. And when you have hundreds or thousands of access points or other devices, this filter option comes in very handy. And you can then clear the filter and you have multiple options of filtering. For example, based on location, network policy, device type. Do you want to see real devices? Do you want to see simulated devices? And because we only have real here, you see how we've filtered out all of those simulated ones. And there's a bunch of other filter criteria as well. So we're happy with what we have. We've selected our AP. And now click Upload. And we'll just push out a delta for now. When you push out the configuration, so there's two things. There's a delta and there's a complete configuration upgrade. A delta configuration upgrade means we're just pushing down the changes. A complete configuration update means we will delete whatever is on the AP currently and then push a full configuration file to the AP, which requires a reboot. Whereas a delta only pushes down those items of configuration or those configuration objects that are missing from the comparison between whatever ExtremeCloud IQ has in its database for this device and what's actually on the device. So let's do a complete configuration update this time, because this is the first time we're uploading this AP. And down here, you have the option of upgrading the Hive OS, which is the operating system on the device. We'll keep the firmware as it is, and we'll just do a performance update. Okay. And then what's going to happen is ExtremeCloud IQ will use the cap web tunnel to push down the configuration to the device. You'll see the progress bar over here. And when it goes to 100%, the configuration has been pushed down to the device. So you see the configuration is now already in sync. And because I did a complete configuration push, this device is now rebooting. Whereas if I did a delta, it wouldn't reboot.